Hello, this is Chef Zach Townsend. I am the chocolatier and founder of Dallas Chocolate Classes in Dallas-Fort Worth. Check out my website, dallaschocolateclasses.com. I will also leave a link in the description. Today we're going to talk about a very important mixture in the world of chocolate, and that is chocolate ganaches. So I want to go over what I see people have the problems with the most and go over some really important points to help you understand chocolate ganaches so you can work with them effectively and without any kind of struggle, and also points that will help you actually correct them when the mixture is not always exactly the way you want it to be. Let me first go over the term chocolate ganache, or the term ganache, because it actually has a really interesting backstory. So ganache is a French term, and it can mean other things outside of the culinary world. So in the culinary world, we typically consider it one type of mixture. But outside of the culinary world, it has other definitions. And one of those definitions actually ties back to why it is called a ganache in the culinary world to begin with. So ganache is an old French word. I don't see it or hear it used very often, but it can mean someone who is clumsy or inept. And the story goes that an apprentice chocolatier accidentally knocked over some water into a vat of melting chocolate, and he was called a ganache for doing that by the master chocolatier. However, the master chocolatier realized that this was a mixture that actually could result in something great, so I suppose he forgave the apprentice, but apparently that is how it picked up the term chocolate ganache. Remembering that story will actually help you remember the type of mixture you're working with. Now, what is a chocolate ganache fundamentally? Whenever I ask that question in my classes, I most often get the answer of, well, I think it's an icing or frosting, a filling, it's something that goes over a cake. I piped it onto my desserts once. It can be a glaze for a cake, and all these points about chocolate ganache are true, but those are its uses. But for you working on chocolate ganache in the kitchen, what's most important is for you to understand fundamentally what it is on a food science level. So chocolate ganaches are an emulsion of water and chocolate. Now, water has to be present in order for you to get the emulsion. So chocolate ganaches are considered fat and water emulsions. It's similar to working on mayonnaise, and most often gets compared to mayonnaise. So what are emulsions? Emulsions are when you have two ingredients that normally repel each other come together, being forced together into a mixture that becomes smooth and creamy. So you have the fat content in that mixture evenly dispersed throughout the water content, and therefore you have a smooth and creamy mixture. We are surrounded by emulsions in the kitchen. Other emulsions are those that we make on the stovetop, like hollandaise sauce, béarnaise sauce, Alfredo sauce. Those all have fat and water in them, and we're looking for something smooth there with those when we make that type of sauce. Also, if we open the refrigerator door, I've already mentioned mayonnaise, but also ketchup, a stick of butter. These are also emulsions because they contain fat and water. Emulsions are one of the most important things you can learn as a cook and also as a pastry chef and chocolatier. So water has to be present in the making of a chocolate ganache. All you have to do is remember back to the apprentice and what happened. He knocked water into a vat of melting chocolate. Once you get water into chocolate, into melting chocolate, you are now on your way to making a chocolate ganache, and you cannot reverse out of that. However, you can continue and make it into something smooth and creamy that you can use later. Now, what are the water sources that are most commonly chosen for making a chocolate ganache? Now, I mentioned water, so I don't necessarily mean you're putting water into the chocolate out of the tap. Now, you could use plain water, but I'm just talking about a water source, a source of water that is actually introduced into the mixture. So what are some of the most common water sources for making a chocolate ganache? The most common one is heavy whipping cream, 36% milk fat. It can also be just whipping cream, which is a little bit lower fat, but that is what we use most often. And in fact, 99.9% of every recipe you see for chocolate ganache has cream as its liquid that is incorporated into the chocolate. Now, why is cream the chosen liquid? Because I already mentioned that water was a requirement. So I'm talking about, again, a water source. Cream happens to be about 53% water. So it is mostly water. So there is our water content that we need whenever we are incorporating cream into the chocolate. However, cream has other components that make a delicious chocolate ganache. It has milk fat, or also called butter fat, and of course that provides more lusciousness to the mixture itself. It also contains milk proteins, and milk proteins have a natural emulsifying power to them that helps us achieve that emulsion. So we refer to these ganaches as, which is easy to remember, cream ganaches. Now, dairy is not a requirement when it comes to a water source. We can also use, for example, pureed fruits. Fruits are an excellent source of water content. Think of when you puree raspberries and you strain out the seeds, you have a large quantity of water content coming from those raspberries, but of course it's a raspberry juice, so it's got a raspberry flavor to it. So you could use that to emulsify into the chocolate. You can also use nut milks such as almond milk, cashew milk, etc. So we do have vegan ganaches because dairy is not the requirement. So there are two basic approaches for making a chocolate ganache for getting the emulsion. One is called the hot method and the other one is called the cold method. I typically like to use the cold method, and there are some advantages to it which I will put up on the screen for you to see. All right, so the cold method. Now in the cold method, this has us pre-melting the chocolate and bringing our liquid just to a warm temperature. Usually I use the cold method because I can get a little bit of a tighter emulsion. Also with the cold method, because we don't have to bring the cream, in this case, or whatever liquid you're using, we don't have to bring it to boiling. There's less of an opportunity for evaporation. And as I previously mentioned that we're dealing with an emulsion, our water quantity in our liquid is important, so we don't want to evaporate anything away. So there's a little bit less of a risk there. Now the hot method has you keeping the chopped chocolate in the bowl in a solid form, not melted, and bringing the liquid to boiling. So the temperature of the liquid is used to then melt the chocolate. And that is typically what you see. It's very common in cookbooks to do it that way. I think because it's simply the fastest method. Is perfectly fine to do either method. I do feel like you get the better emulsion with the cold method, plus there's less risk, as I mentioned, of evaporation. So how do we melt the chocolate? We can melt the chocolate in any way that we prefer. We can use hot water sources on the stove top, like a water bath or a double boiler. The water bath is where the bowl sits in a pan of hot water. The double boiler is where you have the two pans, one pan above the other with simmering water in the bottom there. You can use that method. You can take your bowl of chocolate and set it in the back of your car on a warm day. You can set it inside of a very low temperature oven. You can set it on top of a coffee machine which produces heat, which I have had to do before when I didn't have any other heat source in the kitchen I was working in. You can also, of course, use the microwave. Now, the microwave is a little bit controversial because a lot of people think that using the microwave to melt chocolate is not, they're either embarrassed to admit, frankly, that they use the microwave, which I don't know why, or they feel that they're given the impression that they don't know what they're doing. But I can tell you that in a professional chocolate kitchen, the microwave is used all the time to melt chocolate. And it's always done in a microwave-safe plastic bowl rather than glass. Now, you can use glass in the microwave. The reason why glass isn't used in a professional kitchen is there's a chance for breakage, number one, but number two, glass can heat up a lot faster and retain heat. So if you're multitasking in the kitchen and you've got your chocolate heating up in the microwave, you might forget it and start to overheat the glass, and it might be difficult to get that chocolate cooled down. So the microwave is perfectly fine. Chocolate just wants to be melted at a low, slow temperature. So it doesn't care how it's melted. It only cares how hot it's getting. So never get your chocolate very hot. Just get it warm enough to start melting. And always be on top of it, always be attending to it, stirring it, checking its temperature, whatever you're doing, making sure that it doesn't overheat. Now, using the water sources, you will never burn the chocolate. The chocolate could overheat, which might impact its flavor a little bit, but you will never burn it. I have tested this multiple times, dark milk and white chocolate, and there's no risk of actually burning it. Where you will burn chocolate is in the microwave. So I think that's one reason people obviously shy away from the microwave. They just feel they're not confident about what they're doing. What you have to do though is just start with a few seconds, stir the chocolate, go back into the microwave a few more seconds, stir it again. Just keep stirring it in and out of the microwave, ensuring that your bowl is not getting too hot until it's fully melted at a very warm but not very hot temperature. So for this exercise here, I'm going to use the hot water bath. So this is just a pan of hot water. Now the water is not simmering, it is hot. I can put my finger in it. It's uncomfortable, but I'm not hurting myself. So that's as hot as it needs to be. Remember that chocolate will melt in your hands, right? So chocolate will start melting just below body temperature. So we do not need hot simmering water, very hot simmering water, in order to get the chocolate melted. Now in the water bath, the chocolate sets down into the water. You can use a skillet with an inch of water. It doesn't really matter. Just something to provide kind of a low heat source. And we're going to start melting the chocolate, and I'm going to show you close up in the bowl what's going on. All right, so I have my cream now heated. You can see, I don't know if you can see it very well or not, but there are just wisps of steam coming up, so I would just describe it as very warm, certainly not anywhere near being hot. Most of the chocolate, well, in fact, all of the chocolate is now melted. Now, whenever you have the cold method, you're introducing the warm cream into your melted chocolate. And you typically do that in portions. So think of it in 3 portions. You can do it in 4 portions as well. It's just a slow introduction of the cream into the chocolate. If you want to do it in thirds, you don't have to worry about 33% or being super accurate there. Just think of half the cream, half the remaining, and then the remaining. That's all you have to do. So we're going to start by introducing half the cream. Just pour it directly into the chocolate. Now here I'm using my silicone spatula. Now you're going to start in the center. Just focus on the center. Don't worry about the outsides or the outer edges first. And you're going to see that the mixture is now starting to emulsify. You can see that, in fact, in the center. As your emulsion comes together in the center, you can make your circle bigger. Notice that I'm not putting or whipping this in any kind of way. Now there will be some air bubbles that get into it, but you want to minimize that. So I'm going to get all this cream incorporated. Now at this point we can look at the texture of it, and if you can see it, try to show you in the light. We do see a little bit of graininess, just a little bit of fattiness. And so a broken ganache can be described as fatty or curdled or grainy. It can also look slimy if it's broken. Here we do see the fat coalescing a little bit. So it's perfectly normal that as you're introducing your liquid in portions, that your ganache may begin to break as you begin to emulsify it. And why is that? That's because not all of our water is yet incorporated into the mixture. So our fat to water mixture is out of balance. Now I'm going to put in the remaining, half the remaining, just going to eyeball it. I'm going to switch to the whisk just to show you, you could do either way. Switch to the whisk, just very gently start whisking it, focusing on the center. Now you do have to put some energy into it. So you're not stirring, you are emulsifying. You're not whipping, however, so you don't need to go as fast as for whipping, but you need to go faster than stirring. So once all my cream started to become incorporated into the center, then notice that I was expanding my circle out to get the rest of the cream in there. Now at this point, one good habit, by the way, always wipe down your bowl. You want to make sure all of your mixture gets incorporated and you don't have any lumps setting on the side. Now at this point, what should the mixture look like? Well, we know we have more water content now, but does the mixture look better? No, in fact, it looks worse. It's even grainier, a little bit more separated. So why would that be the case? That's because the fat's continuing to coalesce together, hasn't yet fully spread out, even though we have more water content through our cream. So I'm going to continue on. Now I'm going to add the remaining cream to get all that scraped in there. Remember, you want to try to get all of your liquid. Okay, I'm going to switch back to the whisk. Now I'm going to start emulsifying here. Again, I'm emulsifying in the center. If you've ever made mayonnaise, this action of whisking somewhat vigorously while you are incorporating it will be familiar to you. Now notice it's starting to come together, right? So my emulsion is starting to come together and I'm making my circle bigger. By the way, I have the bowl on a towel to keep it stabilized. I can switch to this grip on the whisk if your arm starts to get tired. All right, now I'm going to slow down a little bit because like I said, I don't want to incorporate a lot of air into this. Now I'm going to look at the texture. I'm going to get a little bit of a cleaner whisk or a cleaner spatula for you to see. But now if you look at it, see how glossy and smooth that is. And I no longer see any fat. I don't see any clumping or graininess or any curdled characteristic to the ganache. It is very well emulsified at this point. So we have a great emulsion just simply by using our whisk or spatula. Now, even though this looks great in the bowl, I'm obviously not done because I have to incorporate the butter in this particular recipe. Now, butter always goes in as a solid, so do not pre-melt your butter. It can go into your ganache cold, right out of the refrigerator, or you can just set it out at room temperature. We're going to do a final step anyway that's going to fully integrate the butter, so I'm not too worried about it. But like I said, you do want it to go in at a solid, and the reason for that is butter actually has its own emulsifying temperatures. So ideally, the temperature of this mixture will be somewhere between 95 and 107 degrees. And as we can see here, it's 102. So the temperature is perfect to add the butter. One thing about using the laser thermometers is that they measure surface temperature. So be sure to stir your mixture first. Just take a very quick shot, release the thermometer, and as you can see, it actually now says 109. So I'm going to wait until it cools down a couple of degrees first. So as I said, between 95 and 107 degrees is your ideal temperature range for adding your butter. I just stirred it and the temperature says 104. So I am now going to add my butter. By the way, this butter's unsalted butter, but you can really add whatever makes sense for your recipe. Now I'm going to take the whisk, just start to get that integrated, and because it's within that temperature range, it should integrate and melt just fine into the mixture. Now I am going to show you a final step. So we can get an amazing emulsion just by doing this. Using a great chocolate, having a well-balanced emulsion, fat to water emulsion, adding things at the right temperature, we can get a really excellent emulsion. But there is a way to make it even better, believe it or not. All right, I think the butter's fully integrated, but this final step will integrate it completely if some of it remains, so I'm not too worried about it. So as you can see, nice, glossy, smooth, very well emulsified. It's got the texture that I want for this particular application. So I could stop here, but I'm going to make it even better. So I'm going to use or take an approach that's called perfecting the emulsion. And just when you think you can't make it any better, you can. So perfecting the emulsion is using an immersion blender to break the fat up and the water into even smaller droplets. And when they're broken up into even smaller droplets, this will make your emulsion even more stable as the fat droplets and water droplets are even better integrated. All right, so whenever you put the immersion blender down into your ganache, first of all, the ganache in the bowl should be deep enough that the head of the immersion blender is fully submerged. If it's too shallow, if you don't have enough ganache in your bowl, you can just pour the ganache into a beaker and do the emulsifying there. So we're going to put the head down into the ganache now. We're going to do what's called burping. Burping just means to make sure that all the air bubbles that are trapped under the head are burped out so that you don't pull in air. So remember that ganaches, you want a really smooth, creamy mixture. So we also want better shelf life. So not integrating too much air will help us with that. So I'm going to turn this on. Start blending. You can notice right away that the center is even a lot smoother than the outer edges. So you can see our emulsion coming together even better. Now, one thing you have to be aware of is you need to do all of your manipulation of your ganache when your ganache is still at a warm temperature. So do not wait for your ganache to start cooling down, or what's called crystallizing, and then use the immersion blender, because you will then potentially start to see breaking in your ganache. So you can see suddenly what looked great now looks perfect. Very smooth, very shiny, very well emulsified, and ready to go. All right, so I am going to pour this into some small bowls just so you can see it a little bit better, the texture a little bit better. Perfectly smooth, very silky, very shiny, very, very glossy. Finish that off later. Like I said, always remember you have to finish dispensing your ganache or working with it while it is still warm. So at this point, I'm going to let it cool down a little bit, and then I'm going to place plastic wrap over the surface and let it fully set at room temperature to completely crystallize without disturbing it. So I hope you found that helpful. There are a couple of other points I want to make about chocolate ganaches. Also reiterate some things. Chocolate ganaches can have more ingredients than what you saw me use in this video. So they can have glucose syrup added into the liquid. That's for extending their shelf life and changing their consistency. You can see infusions into the liquid, such as coffee beans, teas, spices, etc. So that will give you a flavorful cream or liquid that you can then incorporate into the chocolate as well. And then of course liquors or liqueurs are definitely a possibility to integrate into them as well. Your main goal is just to maintain your emulsion, but also to get the consistency correct for what you need that chocolate ganache to be. So your understanding of all these points will open up your world of chocolate ganaches. You'll be able to easily formulate them, and you won't even necessarily need a recipe if you don't have access to one. Please do leave any comments and questions in the comment section. I do read them. I like to answer them and help you out more there. Also, check out the description down below this video, as I will put any appropriate links there. Thank you again, and I'll see you next time.